Well, hello everyone. Here to show you the story, as you see right here, of say a book of Jaycee Dugard and like a Stolen Life. As you see right here, is I went ahead and drew right here a picture. You say of say it's like it's for what the book represents, and then of course you have right here is the book, and then along with the pinecone charm is to say it's a stolen life. And this activity right here is basically talking about, of course, with readers' tuition, is it talking about is the fact about how well it's like for how we can learn, and of course talking about is our future. It is talking about just like the types of things that maybe we would like to think about, what we could accomplish later on in the future. It is, but of course it about readers' tuition is talking about that if we were to read the book, it is talking about like in her book that talks about it's like whenever she had a life, and then of course whenever she was kidnapped by a stranger. It is, but knowing about one part that I do remember, of course, in the book was whenever she was talking about it's like the times from whenever she felt it was like she felt lonely. It was the times for whenever she was lonely, that the things that make her happy. It is. And a lot of times that with a lot of people probably think about it, it's like that you may feel lonely at times, but then on your hand too, that knowing about is that yeah, the common sense about knowing about what the things that you can think about, to say to cheer you up. It is, and knowing about that that half the time it seems like you're alone, but you may be alone at times, but to think about is that more likely that to know that yeah, that you may be alone at times, but then there may some times that you won't be alone. That then that there's somebody there. It's like to comfort you and stuff. And knowing about with me that a lot of times it's like sometimes that I like being alone. Sometimes, and sometimes like to actually talk to someone. It is, but on your hand too, that knowing about in the book is it talking about is that about talking about whenever she was, of course, was kidnapped, and then of course you had two daughters, and then knowing about is like for after you say 18 years it is of knowing about whenever she was reunited with her mom. It is, and talking about was like about parents, about how proud parents would be about their children, knowing about is if they were kidnapped, or maybe if they I don't know. I was thinking about that if there was a story related to a child ran away from home. Of course, that I don't know if I don't even hear too much about that, about children that run away from home. Run away from their parents. It is, and I don't know if really I haven't really read any type of book related to the fact about if a kid ran away from home, but talking about is like whenever if a kid were to get kidnapped, it is, that knowing about that they're returned back to their parents. It is after a certain amount of years, and knowing about that the things that you read about, of course, is that like with me that whenever I was in school, that a lot of times if I were to read a book about something, that a lot of times it knowing about is that of course it would not be what you call about say Jaycee Dugard and the Stolen Life or anything like that, or you say maybe a book kind of like maybe Batman or anything like that. Of course you say that I remember whenever I used to go to the library and knowing the difference, it's like knowing about between fiction and non-fiction stories. It was, and I remember that about when I read a story, and a lot of times that about stories that whenever you read about them, of course, knowing about is that knowing about if it was a true story or not. And a lot of times that I remember that any books that did not have much pictures in it, really did not really want to spend a whole lot of time reading. And like with anybody that they could probably think about, if it's a magazine or anything like that, I remember I used to go to the library and knowing about that, yeah, that you go to the library and check out a book. It is that knowing about that, yeah, with the book, and then of course you read it, and then half the time you're just wondering about how come there ain't much pictures, and if there are any pictures, then knowing about hey, really is there something a little bit more interesting about the book other than the fact about maybe a few sentences, knowing about there's one or two pages and maybe a chapter where there's no pictures at all, and then compared to like the children's books. It is, But on the other hand too, that you got right here is that is the ribbon. It is it. Yeah, right here is the ribbon, but other than that, knowing about how educated that we could be, if maybe if we were to take time to read about stories, and knowing about that I right here is like you have a bookmark of knowing about is like we got right here is the different chapters say of the book, and then of course it's like a few symbols. It's like what I would add along with the calculator. Knowing about is like how many pages have you read, and a lot of times with most book readers, you could probably think about is that whenever you read a book, you could probably think about that really, that knowing about what part, what's your favorite part, scene of the book it is, or anything like that. And a lot of times I notice that whenever you read, that it's like that, yeah, that sometimes whenever if you were to take out a book and then read it, and then that knowing about that you only want to take 10 minutes to read it, and then that may get bored with it, maybe put it down, whatever it is. But I used to always think that a lot of times, whenever I was in school, I would check out a book. But I used to always think that a lot of times with story reading, it's like was boring and a waste of time, whatever it is. But on the other hand too, that knowing about the things that you can read so far as reader's tuition is knowing about how well educated maybe you could be about knowing about if you were to read a book. And the way I think about it is that it's like they go by, it's like for between person, place, or thing. See here, I can maybe use people, but anyway, for like for a person, place, or thing. But other than that, is is maybe I can go ahead and use giving, also anything like that, or thing. But anyway. Like you think about writing something down, and then maybe a few other words may come out. It's like if think about maybe 5, and then later on you may come up with maybe 7 more, or whatever it is. But on the other hand too, knowing about with me that knowing is like one for the, it's like with the smallest one of the ones with the smallest hand. Right here are some pine cones, of course, I saved from over the years. Of course, with the pine cones could represent, it's like for a new beginning, like in the book, or could represent is like knowing about, it's like talking about, it's like ways that you would like to protect. It's like so far as of celebrating, knowing if like if you collect pine cones and maybe paint them. I was thinking about that. Of course, these pine cones came off a few trees that they that they cut down around here. But we got right here is with the pine cone, and later on that I was just thinking about I may paint it my favorite color or anything like that, or knowing about is like thinking about it's like for like a symbol, say for Earth Day it is. Knowing about it's like you got the Earth right here, and knowing about that you have maybe the rotating part of it, and then knowing about that how well the grass and everything stays fresh. Is like knowing about how clean how clean we can help to protect to say the planet is, how protect the Earth it is. But on the other hand too, that knowing about with all the things that I have, of course, that for so far as readers' tuition is knowing about this, like with me that since I haven't say e-reader now, since I got Nook, that I don't know if they would be the same thing, but anyway, since I have like a little reading device, right, and then along with say got the calculator, knowing about with me is like I haven't read the whole book yet, but then on the other hand too, that knowing about is I think about is like the things that you would that you could learn if you were to read a story, compared to if you were to watch a movie or something like that. But on the other hand too, that I would more likely that depend on what subject that you want to talk about. Really, if you want to talk about, it's like so far as the experience about about the girl, about whenever she her life, and of course the stolen life, and then knowing about it's like any story, any topic that anything that you want to read so far as the story goes about how she reunited with her parents and with her mom, and then of course knowing about how well she is doing, and then of course how educated that she is. But on the other hand too, that knowing about that, I remember when I was in school that after you read about 3 or 4 pages, a lot of times the teachers would ask you if you can write a few paragraphs down, and it's like sometimes that was hard for me to do. One of them was knowing the fact about really that really if you can read, or knowing about that, hey, if you can't read, maybe, I can't read French or whatever, but French or Spanish or anything like that. But other than that, it's talking about with the reader's tuition, and Noah is about how well our education would be. So far as talking about is focused about our future, is talk about is like what we learned today. But other than that, it's talking about with Jaycee Dugard, the reader's tuition coloring.